Anything from the culture in Silicon Valley that struck you at the time?
I just love that people slept under their desks. I love that.
We were all in working.
It's like everybody put everything on the line to work hard because that's the culture I came from. Like in Nigeria, people work super hard for less valuable things.
CEO and co-founder.
Andela is the founding partner of BC.
Pierre, co-founder. Iyinoluwa.
E is one of the greatest entrepreneurs you've never heard of. He started multiple billion-dollar companies in Africa. He's from Nigeria, and he came over, went to college at Waterloo in Canada. I knew him as a 19-year-old a long time ago. It's amazing to see his journey building Andela, building so many other great companies, and helping tens of thousands of people be more successful themselves in Africa. E's company, Flutterwave, is now the highest valued technology company in Africa. I don't think people understand the potential of Africa. Nigeria, there's 8 million people being born a year. In 15 years, as E will tell you, there's going to be more people working in Africa than the rest of the world combined. It's going to be exciting to hear from E what they're doing there. I'm Joe Lonsdale. Welcome to the American Optimist.
Well, thank you very much for having me here.
We have my friend Iyinoluwa. We're going to call you E because that's what we call you.
Yes, that's what we've been calling me for a long time, more than 10 years now.
E is an extraordinary entrepreneur. You're born in Nigeria and you built your businesses in Africa.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your background. How'd you get going?
Sure. I mean, I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, and then I went to Waterloo, which was where I met Pierre, and Pierre introduced me to the world of technology. Pierre used to work at Adela.
That's right. I think you were 19 or something.
Yeah, I was like 19. I was like 19 or 18 or something. I don't know, some ridiculously young age.
Let's go even before that, though. Your father is a prominent minister.
He's a prominent minister. Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And what did you learn growing up, being exposed to that?
I mean, he wasn't a prominent minister when I was growing up. He was more like he was rising through the ranks. And actually, at the time when I was growing up, particularly in my high school years, he was working for Royal Dutch, and he was negotiating the release of hostages from pirates,
Wow.
Niger Delta pirates. That was literally what he was doing. It was his last assignment at Royal Dutch. And it taught me a lot. Like just watching him sacrifice a lot for other people just taught me a lot. Because he would like walk into this life or death scenarios and literally just make sure like people are okay, families got out,
Wow.
all of that. So it taught me a lot. I mean, growing up, it just taught me a lot about Christian service. And, he was such a good person. And beyond that, he was just such a faith-filled person that he still remains the only one I know who's still friends with the militants. So they respected him. Like whenever he's coming, they're like, pastor's coming. You can't mess around
He's
with
a pastor, so they respect him. They're really still
Exactly.
respect both sides.
And their parents went to church. They went to his church. He tried to treat them like human beings when a lot of people, because to be honest, even though the accusation was done wrongly, at the end of the day, they did have legitimate grievances about kind of the environmental destruction in Niger Delta, although I think they should have gone about it more legitimate ways.
They shouldn't have been terrorists, but they still had legitimate grievances.
They still had legitimate grievances.
He respected them.
And he respected them, and he engaged them on the basis of their legitimate grievances.
That's the best way to work with people engaged.
So he taught me a lot about that growing up. And literally, I lived in a house where I never knew who my siblings were, because we just had a lot of people in the house.
I was taking care of everyone around.
Exactly. And it's the same thing with us. Those are the things I've learned from him over the years, and even till today. Even now we're all gone from home. Still got a lot of folks in the house. I don't know how.
Well, you have young kids in the house now.
I've got a lot of people in my house too.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about a pivotal moment in your life, E. In 2014,
Yeah.
there was a horrific stampede in a stadium where
Yeah.
90,000 young Nigerians were competing for jobs. What was the situation at the time? Why was there high unemployment? And how did that affect your life's direction?
I mean, for me, high unemployment has always been a fact of Nigeria's life. If you actually look at the economic history, and it's for a bunch of reasons. A lot of it is structural, right? Nigeria's median age is 19, meaning half the population is under the age of 19. Half the population is over the age of 19. And to make matters worse, there's not a lot of university education. So 12% participation rate. But you see what happened in 2014 brought it home to me for the first time, because, I was walking home. I was running a startup at the time. It was called Fora. And I was just driving home from work, and it was a Saturday, and all these young people 90,000 of them showed up for an immigration desk job. And look, this is not a high-paying job. This is literally just sitting down, stamping people's passports.
Yeah.
90,000 kids showed
They're
up.
so
for that.
eager to work.
You just want to work. And that was the day I figured, well, if these people can do anything, why not teach them stuff that actually makes them money? Why not teach them how to work on the internet? And that was the day that the switch flipped for me. And then, over time, kind of snowballed into what became Andela.
So before we talk about Adela, let's go back a little bit. What did you learn from being at Waterloo? What did you learn from people like Pierre, who showed you the world of technology? Like what was there out in America and Canada that you hadn't seen in Nigeria?
When I was coming to Canada, I had a very clear view of the world. And for me, it was, my first co-op term was at the United Nations. And I thought the only way to change the world was to work with government and to work with nonprofits and to be a good person and do all of that. And, I kind of got a little bit cynical after seeing what happened at the United Nations, because nothing happens at the United Nations.
Yeah, it's not really working.
And I came back and I was like, look, man, I'm done with all these BS. They're just making money and drinking cafes in Vienna, whatever. I want to make money. So I became
more cynical.
I was very, very cynical, right?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to be a corporate lawyer. I'm going to be the guy who defends monopolies.
Oh, no.
Literally, that was my paper. I did my 4th year paper in 2nd year. And my paper was on how you sue the Canadian government. At the time, it was trying to sue Wind Mobile for being a non-indigenous business trying to get into the telco industry. So I was literally making an argument that companies were subject, because they were people, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms should apply to them. And so you couldn't be protectionist. That was how cynical I was. So I was on my way to becoming a very different kind of person.
Yeah.
But then, I encountered Pierre, and Pierre introduced me to a world where people could do good by building things and making money. I mean, making money was not the most important thing. It was just you could actually build great stuff, make money, but also do a ton of good in the world, more good than you would ordinarily do otherwise. And I think that became the foundation of my own journey in tech, because for me, it became a superpower for getting things done, for aligning people's interests to do good. And that continues to remain the biggest thing I learned from Waterloo and from Pierre.
I love it. And if you're making money, that means it's sustainable. It means you can do more
Yeah,
good.
you can do more of that. You can do another one and another one and another one. Exactly.
And you came out to Silicon Valley. Any memories of the time? I think you must have seen us on Marina Boulevard in San Francisco.
Yeah.
First started working
I saw you everywhere. Yeah. San Francisco, Mountain View.
Anything from the culture in Silicon Valley that struck you at the time?
I love that people worked so hard. I don't know. I think today now it's like a work team to save.
But it's good.
Like 9 to 5, don't invest yourself in work. But I just love that people slept under their desks. I love that.
We were all in working.
It's like everybody put everything on the line to work hard, because that's the culture I came from. Like in Nigeria, people work super hard for less valuable things. So, I grew up working hard, and I just love that in Silicon Valley. That was a culture, because it was very different from what I saw at the United Nations. People, they want to take a coffee break at 12, and then at 2 o'clock they disappear. It's the most hilarious place
They
to
didn't
work.
really have stuff they were working towards that was
Fair
real,
enough.
probably. So they had to take a lot of time off.
Well, but they say they were trying to save the world. Well, if you're trying to save the world, you should be working a whole lot more than 4 hours a day,
Yeah, the people who are really trying to save the world are probably the ones who are working
Exactly.
really hard. That's fair.
Exactly.
And so you got out of Waterloo, you worked on Bookneto and Fora, distance learning for African universities, some of these areas.
Yeah.
But then you had this experience where you saw these 9,000 people wanting to work and you wanted to help them.
Yeah.
So tell us about how Adela got going. Like what do you have to do to get this started?
It was just a process. So I saw this thing and I realized that, look, I'm probably in the wrong business, because my business at the time, first of all, I started out very well intentioned, of course. I wanted to help university professors to be able to do distance learning, but it was a little bit too early. The internet penetration wasn't there. The regulator wasn't having it.
Yep.
And so I thought, okay, since that's not possible, why don't I just start selling online courses to young professionals who want to get an MBA, but they can't afford to leave their jobs and go away for 18 months to get an MBA.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, that was going very well. It's a beautiful business. It was going very well. And then I had this encounter. And the problem was I couldn't unsee it because it was like, well, all these people who already have jobs, you're helping them get more education. They're just wanting for a promotion. There are kids out there who don't even have a job.
These guys are hungry and they're
hungry.
desperate.
They don't even have a job. So like, I'm serving the wrong market. That market is too small. This market is much bigger. The market for unemployment, way bigger than the market for professional education. And so what happened afterwards was shortly after that, I went to the US and I reconnected with Jeremy Johnson, who was an entrepreneur who had taken his company public with 2U. And he was introduced to me a couple years earlier by a guy called Lee Rubenstein, who was the vice president of business development at edX. Yep. And I'd met him at a conference. Anyway, long story short, me and Jeremy get into a conversation. We're catching up. You know, I haven't seen him in a while. He just took his company public. And he started telling me about his experience in Kenya. And he said a lot of things that concord with what I saw, which was university education in Africa and most parts of the world is a waste of people's money, especially in countries where the incomes are not large enough and the state is not rich enough to be able to afford, you know, to educate people just for the sake of doing so. And his idea was, what happens if you build a new model of education where you train people for a job that actually exists, as opposed to just educating them for the sake of giving them a letter degree? And that was the origin of Andela. You know, and at first we thought we were going to do Salesforce training.
Oh, really?
That's actually where we started.
That's funny.
Like, we're going to do Salesforce training.
It's a big ecosystem.
You know, it's a big ecosystem. And maybe we'll go back to that because I think they're expanding very, very much. It's a big company now. So Salesforce, but then over time, we looked at the data, realized that the real gap was in software development.
And that the world desperately needs
engineers. And then that was how we started.
And who'd you start training? Like, who are these kids that you'd work with?
We just basically, so I remember putting out a tweet at the time, and literally the tweet said, no experience required. Come and learn, come get paid to learn how to be a software engineer. So literally we would pay these kids who were straight out of school, had a university degree, but wasn't in something useful per se, or something marketable. And we would pay them, you know, $500 a month to just come and learn how to build software. Amazing. For 6 months.
So you paid them at first.
We paid them at first. We still pay them. I mean, when we train, we no longer do a lot of training because now the world is full of boot camps. But when we trained, we paid them every month because we need to take their minds off the day-to-day vagaries of life.
They need to have enough like food and shelter.
Not just that. It's not even that. We provided that to them as well. But look, I can tell you, the black tax, like family is a big deal, and you live to take care of your family. So if they did not have some money they could send home, their parents would be like, why don't you have a job?
Got it.
And then there was another policy reason, because the reality was also that I couldn't offer a degree granting program without going through this extremely long accreditation process that was just impossible to get through. I have to buy 100 hectares of land, blah, 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 blah.
That's a lot.
And I was just like, okay, what's the shortcut? I'm just going to pay them and say they're my employees. And well, you don't have to care about what they make. So the government got off my back on that back.
Just call them your employees.
They're my employees. I'm training them and they're not making me any money, but it's okay. They're my employees.
And then once you've paid them, how's it work? They then stay with you and work with you for other companies?
I mean, the beautiful thing is, so we paid and trained them for 6 months, and then they onboard to companies. And then those companies, we place them with those companies. Those companies pay us here in the US, and then we pay them.
And that
was the original model.
And that covered your costs to expand.
Covered our costs, gave us some margin, all that. Although the model also has shifted with time. You know, as remote work became more popular, we started to do, I think now it's a marketplace model. Yep. So the way it works now is like you actually are probably already trained through one of the 1 million boot camps now on the continent.
Got it.
And, you know, you place yourself on the talent
They no longer
marketplace.
need a new boot camp.
They don't need a boot camp. They don't need somebody to pass through their pay. They just need somebody to place them.
This was an inspiring business. Mark Zuckerberg invested. I believe.
Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg invested. Spark Capital invested.
Yep. Cool.
Alex Finkelstein, and then Mark Zuckerberg invested, and then we got money from Generation, and then we got money from SoftBank most recently. The business is doing extremely well.
I love it. And so after Andela, so you haven't just started one unicorn. You kept going.
There's a lot of problems in Africa. There's like 250,000 unicorns.
That's my favorite answer. That's my favorite answer. Is there's a lot of problems in Africa.
There's a lot of problems
because when you build, you're solving a problem.
You're solving the problem. You're solving $1 billion problem in Africa. And the funniest thing I would say is that what most people don't realize is that if you're solving a problem in Africa, you're probably solving a problem for majority of the future of the world, because by the end of the century, right, Africa is the majority of the world's population. In fact, just in the next 15 years, Africa is already majority of the world's working population.
Really? Next 15? I didn't realize that. Is that close?
Literally 2035. We're already there.
What's Nigeria's population about?
Today, Nigeria is 200.
And how much are they
people.
adding every decade? Do you know?
They're literally adding 10 million kids a year.
A year.
You
guys are making babies like crazy.
A lot of babies. Let me tell you something. People don't understand how half the country is under 18. Half.
Wow.
100 million kids.
This is fun. That's amazing.
It is fun.
Wow.
It is fun. So, I mean, it's just incredible, the scale.
You're doing everything Elon said you're supposed to do, huh? With that. You've been following that? He's calling for that. So,
no, look, we did all the stuff Elon said to do like 10 years ago. Now we're just trying to help him realize we're Mars and he doesn't need to go anywhere.
Before I get back to the other companies you built, I want to ask, because we're talking about Nigeria, it's growing so fast. I was fascinated the other day. This is a controversial topic.
Yeah, please.
But so I saw the other day that America has the highest percentage of kids that only have one-parent households. We're 23%.
Yeah.
Nigeria is about 4% apparently, is what the data says, which is amazing to me. And so what... It seems like that's actually a very positive cultural thing going on there.
It is a positive cultural attribute, and I hope we can keep it, right? And I think what it is really, look, I'm going to be honest, and maybe it's a little bit of a controversial point of view, but it's the emasculation of black men.
In America.
That is just a fact, right? It is a big topic. It is something that we talk about. Black men simply have not been empowered by kind of the liberal system to be men, to be providers, to be responsible. And there's a lot of work. It's happening already, thankfully, right? Because people are taking active interest in making sure men are taught to be men, right? And they understand they have a role in society that, you can't just wish away, right? And I think that's the reason why you have these, single parent households, because you have a lot of men who haven't been necessarily, socialized into their role as fathers, as brothers, as men. I mean, for me, I spend a lot of time with my dad now. And, you're consistently reminded, look, you're a man. There's certain things you need to be able to do. There's certain responsibilities you have.
Is that tied to your religion in Nigeria?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it ties to the religion, right? You have men's groups, and they're, there are men that mentor you.
These are Christian and Muslims, men's groups, both? Or?
Well, I mean, I imagine there are. And I think with Muslims, they even kind of worship men and women, as you know. But like for Christians, which I can speak more about, we have this Christians men's group. I have a lot of male mentors and father figures in my life, not just my father, but like, I've got the chairman of my company at Flutterwave, was like a father to me as well. So it's something that's celebrated, being a man and being a father figure, not just to your kids, but to other people's kids as well. Even today, like I'm like godfather to like 10 kids. I don't even know how many of them I have now. It's, I have one every other week, and I got all these kids. You get into a role where very early you're taught how to take responsibility, and so there's certain things you can do. There are just certain things you never think of doing. Like you have a kid and you abandon. That's not possible. You can't do that. Or if you're, you are the head of your home and you are regarded and respected as such.
If someone makes a mistake and they do have a kid, is there a corrective mechanism that's different there, you think, than the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, what happens is other men in the society
they
make
step
that
forward.
man take responsibility. If somebody... I mean, this happens a lot, as you can imagine. There's quite a number of teenage births and all that. That happens, right? It does happen.
But you push the person to have
duty.
duty.
The man is then told, hey, you give
Don't be a
had
deadbeat.
bit,
Don't be a deadbeat dad.
You can't be
Yeah.
a deadbeat dad. Now you got to figure out how you get a job, you provide, and they don't just scold him. They provide him those opportunities.
They help him.
They help him. They say, oh, look, come, help. So I think that's really what has to happen here, right? Like black men have to be empowered to rise to the occasion. Those who are responsible and great role models have to now help those who...
And by the way, this is a problem with white men in our society and other men as well. now, 'cause
Yeah,
it's-
exactly. I think broad societal issues.
It's it is. I think the data used to be 5% white and 25% black families when there was a famous Moynihan report in the 60s. It's Democrat calling out the issue, and then it's now I think up to it's up to like what 40% something for whites and 70% something for blacks.
Preservation of family is so important.
It's critical
And this
for
whole
a whole society.
idea, there are real gender roles. Like you can't just wish-wash all these things, right? And for me, I mean, everything is grounded in faith. At the end of the day, these things are written in the Bible about what men need to be able to do. If you're a man, you don't provide for your family, you're worse than an infidel.
Yep.
This is what the Bible says.
Some of these traditions are very helpful for functional societies.
Exactly.
That's very interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. When you have a society that runs on the word of God, it works better. I mean, this is what Israel proves to everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean, ironically, as I'm Jewish, but I think in our community we follow these things as well very very closely. I want to ask you a little bit about Israel. We actually were in Jerusalem when we ran into each other.
Amazing time.
It was fun to see that you're based in Africa, but you're spending a lot of time in Israel.
spend a lot of time
raise
in
money
Israel.
there. You partner there. Why? What's going on with that?
I think for me, one of it is my faith, right? So, for us, one of the things that we're enjoying to do as Christians is to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem for us is a very revered place. And what has really helped is, we've had a very tough time in Nigeria-Israel relations, I'll say, partially because of the regime in power is mostly Muslim. And we've had to make an intentional effort to rebuild those bonds of brotherhood and friendship with Israel. So for me, it's really like a spiritual mandate. And then, the bonus is, you get the benefit of this incredible innovation ecosystem of people who literally build through walls and mountains. And they, when you go to Israel, we just see so many things that amaze us in terms of the people's mentality, in terms of the strength of the culture, in terms of the fulfillment of prophecy, in terms of people's attitude to innovation. And it's inspiring. It's just an inspiring place to be. So we spent a lot of time there. We had somebody who was part of the team there, and we're looking for ways to just keep learning from Israel.
Do people from Israel come to Nigeria and work on
Increasingly,
things with you?
increasingly, it's becoming more widespread. I don't remember what the ambassador told me, but I think he was saying there's a couple 100,000 Israelis in Nigeria.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of them are in construction. A lot of them are in the retail business.
Well, it's a huge, with 8 million babies being born a year, there's
You
a
know?
big opportunity
Yeah,
there.
you know.
That's one Israel every year.
Agriculture.
Israel's very good at agriculture. That makes sense.
So we do quite a lot.
That's cool. That's I'm glad to hear about that relationship.
Yeah, it's an amazing relationship.
I want to hear more about your building. So you started a fintech payments company, Flutterwave. Was that in 2016?
Flutterwave, yes.
It's a few billion-dollar company. I think is that
It's
the
the most
highest
valuable company on the continent.
The highest
3.5
valuation for an
billion.
African tech startup.
Yeah.
Congratulations, E.
Thank you.
So what is it? What's Flutterwave? What's the impact?
So Flutterwave was, when we were building Andela, one of the biggest challenges was, we needed to be paid, right? And it was really fascinating to realize that, it was very difficult to facilitate those payments, before Flutterwave. So, as soon as Andela got off the ground and started going, I started working with these bankers who had invested in to say, why don't we try and fix this payment issue? They'd been thinking about it for a long time. They were standard bank bankers, spent 8 years, they had all the experience. So we started building out what became Flutterwave. And we realized something very interesting. Digitization of payment rests on the merchant's ability to accept multiple different payment methods and reconcile them.
Yep.
So a lot of these guys wanted to go online, wanted to grow beyond the physical limitations of their business. But, there were all these payment methods that cost real money to integrate. You needed to integrate MasterCard, you needed to integrate Visa. If you had M-Pesa, you had to integrate that, PayPal, integrate that. And they couldn't afford engineers. So all we did was we brought together all these different payment methods into one box, and we made it available to them across all channels.
PayPal, Visa, what
Everything.
else?
Visa, MasterCard, Amex, the local payment methods, the mobile money, bank transfers.
It's like M-Pesa. Would you do too in Kenya? Or
Yeah,
no?
that's in Kenya, right?
But
And then-
you guys don't use that there.
No, we don't use it in Nigeria, but our business was Pan-African.
But in Flutterwave, we'll use that there. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're a Flutterwave merchant in Kenya, you probably want M-Pesa. You don't want bank account payments. So we were able to aggregate all these payment methods across currency, across country, across payment type,
That's cool.
and then just hand it out to everybody. And then it turned out the big companies wanted it. So Uber was like, we love this.
This is perfect for Uber. It saves some time.
Exactly.
So anyone coming to Africa is going to work with this. Do you use like USDC for some things then? Or?
So we didn't. The business at the time there wasn't crypto.
Well, there wasn't any of that then,
No.
yeah.
But today I will tell you, if we're rebuilding Flutterwave, something I've learned, right? All African currencies, forgive me, colored paper backed by the US dollar.
That's fair.
So I'm like, look, if I was building this thing today, I'll just build USDC and be like, yeah, do whatever you like on the ground.
Because it's all related.
Yeah.
Sometimes I shouldn't say this, but sometimes our own US dollar scares me a little bit. So I'll try to make sure we behave ourselves.
Trust better. We are relying on you, Joe.
Okay. We're going to hold him accountable for you, E.
Please.
The world's counting on us not
Please,
to be too crazy.
exactly. Please, I don't know what we're gonna do if you guys lose the US dollar.
We'll try to keep Uncle Joe in line here.
Please,
Pal.
yeah. Make sure he doesn't do too much.
All right. That's funny. It's Uncle Sam and Uncle Joe these days. And so you also have a fund. You also have a fund. I'm lucky to be a small investor
Yes,
in your fund.
absolutely, and we're grateful to have you. Joe.
Well, you've absolutely crushed it. And tell us, what are you seeing with your fund? What's going on in Africa?
So we've kind of come through an interesting evolution. I'm a reluctant venture capitalist, right? So for me, initially I was just happy to just hop from one company to the other every 3 years, and then I was like, I have 30 years to do this. If I do that, that's like 10 companies. That's nice, but what if one or two fail? Like, how do we balance that out? And so I figured, look, hopping around companies is probably not the best approach.
Well, you've done a pretty good job. I hope you keep building too.
Well, no, but that's definitely true. But I just think, building an institution that can continue to do that is much better than just being one guy
100%.
who lived for as long as God gives you, who can hop from one company to the other. I mean, that's a great living. As you
institution
grow
is-
and you want to have kids and you want to spend more time with your family, I don't think I could be doing Flutterwave Andela type hours. You know what I mean?
It's hard.
Very
I agree.
hard. Yeah.
If we have 4 little girls here too, now it's tough. Yeah.
Exactly. So I thought about how do you institutionalize this type of support for founders that are building what we imagine are, amazing category defining companies that can fulfill Africa's potential and promise.
Yep.
So basically what we've now evolved into, so first fund, $1 million. I just used my money and we did 22 times. We returned 22 times on that. We distributed 9 million. Everything was amazing.
Yep.
Fund 2, which we just closed, this is our final quarter. We basically went out and took outside capital, but we did it in a very innovative way. We tried to experiment with a lot of things. Retail investors. I have a lot of stories about that one.
That's a mess, man.
Huge mess. Angel list, rolling funds.
Oh, wow.
I did all that shit. I did all that stuff.
That's fine.
And I'll tell you, lots of stories and lots of reasons why venture capital is the way it is. I think when you understand it from having done it by experience,
first.
it's like, this is why they do it this way.
Yeah.
So now in our third fund, we're very traditional. But a few things we've learned, right? First of all, we're operators, we're builders like you, Joe. We build stuff. We're not really like financial investors. We're not like, just doling out money investors. And, it's unique on the continent because you don't have that many successful investors. Successful entrepreneurs becoming investors. It's not yet a thing on the continent because you barely have any successful entrepreneurs.
Yep.
How much more? So most of the investors are bankers. So we're one of the few people who, when an entrepreneur comes to us, we actually know what you're talking about.
I love it. This is like the 1970s, 60s.
Absolutely.
Here. All the bankers with all the money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So think about the way the 1970s venture ecosystem was. That is what we're doing. So we're like a venture fund back when Dog Leon was still doing
You're
our
basically
capital.
like Sequoia.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Sequoia and Kleiner were built by the guys who built the early companies.
Exactly. So that's us now. So in this fund, so it's a few companies, but really focused on very game-changing companies, very thesis focused, and I can talk about that. And we're gonna take meaningful stakes. We're going to be active governance. We're going to do all of that. And to be honest, part of the experiments we did, for example, in Fund 2, we funded 80 companies. I mean, this is an incredible experiment.
That's a lot.
So I know everything about what to do and what not to do in venture from Fund 2.
It's a good
By
practice.
experience, not even like I didn't read any books. I can tell you, don't
you
do
learn.
this.
Yeah.
So in Fund 3, we're really going to be very focused, very traditional, very much helping high quality founders to be able to build this. And
I love it.
For us, the theme of the fund is how do you unlock Africa's digital economy? You've got this wave of young people coming. The reality is the local economies are not able to sustain them. And that's a problem because if you live in an economy where half your economy is under the age of 18, I mean, look, the reality is
It has to grow a lot.
it has to grow a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's unlikely that 18-year-olds are going to create much economic value. They
Yeah.
don't buy stuff. I don't know how your 18-year-olds fare, but they don't buy a lot of stuff. So you have a ton of consumption.
And then people have a lot of time on their hands
They've
also.
got a lot of time, and that can be destructive,
Interesting.
right? For the whole world, not just for Africa. I mean, think about it. If you've got the largest and the youngest workforce in the world, which we're going to be in 15 years,
We better keep them occupied.
creating just 3% of global GDP.
Yeah.
Think about
Interesting.
well, on the one hand, the danger, but on the other hand, the opportunity, right? You've got a ton of alpha,
yeah,
right?
I love
Because
it.
those young people can be trained to do stuff that actually creates value for the world.
I love it.
And the beautiful thing about that medium point is the internet. So they can work from Africa, like we did at Andela, and create value from the rest of the world from Africa.
What are some of the ideas for employing a lot of these young people? Because this is like a daunting task if you have tens of millions.
It's
join.
not that daunting. I think there's at least 2-3 million jobs on the internet that we're not even talking about today. For example, graphics. We can make a ton more movies about everything.
There's probably a lot more. It's probably
You
easier to
want to
make
build the
content.
metaverse? I think there's a ton of people who have a ton of time to actually graphically graft together the metaverse.
Well, they could also play characters in the metaverse.
Exactly, you can do that too. That's a ton of money. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're trying to do that, I mean, but then there's also the table stakes, programming. And look, even organizing unstructured data, that's a job.
Yep.
There are people. There's a company I saw in Israel called Data Loop. They're such an amazing company. Like in Africa, they're like everybody's favorite company because they essentially have a database that structures like their database for unstructured data, and they employ a ton of young Africans that literally just, hey, this is Joe's face.
That's funny. Yeah.
It's like
You can teach a lot
teaching
of stuff.
the AI,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you need that for the AI to work very well.
And to solve problems. Yeah.
So there's a ton of work. I think there is no limit.
Do you do anything with manufacturing there at all?
Yes, I think there's distributed manufacturing and assembly.
that
That's
seems
another
interesting.
big one.
Yeah.
That's another big one. I don't know that we will come up with like the deep science or whatever. I'm not that optimistic. But I think there's stuff that we can do perhaps easier or cheaper than robots. If you want to make like customized handwear, for example,
that's true.
you could probably do that there, So there's a lot of things like hair, for example. Nigeria is very quickly becoming the hair capital of the world. If you want to make attachments for your hair, that's a whole
big
business.
market.
It's a huge business.
So I mean, Africa's tech sector, I think it raised $5 billion in
Yes,
2021.
just $5 billion.
And which is
That's like one company for you.
Sure, we have a few big companies here, but it's growing. It's growing.
Yes,
Like,
it's
how
growing.
a lot of people historically, when you talk about Africa, it's like, oh, it's scary, it's messy, they're gonna steal, it's gonna be a mess, and then you don't touch it. But how should tech investors be thinking about this? Like, how should we be engaging with it?
Look, I mean, I think the right tech investors, and this is what you taught us, Joe, have to be thinking in terms of decades, not now. And when you look at the demographics, and the demographics of where is the world's productive population, it's Africa, right? Talent is in Africa. But here's the thing, right? You cannot think about investing in African startups the way you would think about investing in Silicon Valley today, right? It's not going to work because we're stuck in the 70s. You need to go back and read some books about how
You got to be
Eugene
much
Kleiner-
more involved in the company, making sure it works.
much more involved, or partnered with people who can. Because realistically, I mean, I don't expect you to leave all this opportunity in the US and then, except you're me.
Well, I think we're having lunch after this to talk about how we build together, which I'm
Exactly.
excited about.
Exactly.
But so it sounds like people need to partner with people like
They're
you,
partnered
who
with people
build
like
things.
us who can build things on the ground. And you got to be more willing to take risk on things that perhaps are not just code. So it's thinking about systems, thinking about infrastructure. and thinking about ways of making it work. So, for example, like a lot of companies, I think, will be better served instead of being deployed a lot of equity, partnering with debt providers.
Yep.
And that's something that hasn't come up. You know, we built an incredible company called Move simply on the back of a little bit of equity and a lot of debt.
It's a big logistics company.
It's not. It's basically like we basically help Uber with vehicle supply, but in a way that's fair to drivers.
Okay, got it.
So we lease the car to drivers, but not forever. They only lease for 30 months, 4,500 rides roughly.
That's smart.
And then they own the car.
Yep.
So that allows us
They
to
earn their
keep
car by
the
driving,
asset.
and you help them do that. And then that's
Simple.
For that market. That helps a lot.
That helps a lot.
Because these drivers, unlike in America,
Car ownership is 2%.
they're less likely to have the car.
Less
Exactly.
like to have a car. But you do so many things by that. You can jumpstart a whole car manufacturing business.
Yep.
You know,
That's true.
you can jumpstart a mobility. It has this down the line effects.
You could do actually logistics with that by giving everyone cars.
Yes,
and
you can even do
setting up.
trucks. Like
Yeah.
we're actually trying to experiment with trucks now and bikes and
Probably similar
all
for
this stuff.
construction companies. Give
Same.
people trucks.
Same.
Then, yeah, I love it. That's
Same.
great.
So think about that for housing, for example, right? Imagine if you can help people own their homes and you can pay for it over time. You know what I mean? And you can use leverage finance for that.
It's amazing. We started the American Optimist to push back against a lot of cynicism, a lot of pessimism we're seeing. A lot of young people say, oh, the world's all broken and messed up. Like, what would you tell people? What would you tell people in the U.S. who are cynical and who think the world's broken for them?
Look, if the world's broken, it's because we made it so. And so it also means that we can fix it. You know, I mean, that's just what it is. I think that, first of all, I don't think the world's broken. I think a lot of people, even in Africa, I mean, I come across all these activists every now and then, and they're like trying to sell me on why Africa is bad. And I'm like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. If you can look at the data, it's been incredible progress over the last 20 years, in spite of everything you hear.
It is amazing progress.
Incredible progress.
We show some graphs on the screen.
Yeah.
It's amazing progress.
Incredible
Yeah.
progress. And I think if we just do a few of the right things, we can make even more progress.
And what technologies and innovation have you most excited for the future? What are the things you're most excited by that you're seeing?
I know a lot of people are down on crypto. I'm not excited for the shit coins. I'm excited for stable coins because the globalization of the dollar, maybe this is a political statement, is the best hedge against the Feds.
That's fair. That's
right?
fair.
Because the moment the world is in control of the dollar, then monetary policy becomes real, right?
Yeah.
You know, you don't have that much control. I mean, maybe you can control what's happening in the U.S., but
No, it starts to change.
it starts to change.
Yeah, and I love it. We universally want to have more people in the same system.
Exactly. You need more people in the same system. You need more markets be created. I'm very excited about that, honestly speaking. I'm very excited about some new advances in optic fiber for connectivity. So I've been looking at some stuff that's going on there, and also, you know, what Elon is doing with Starlink. He doesn't even know how much impact it's going to create in the world because he's going to put all the telecom companies.
It's actually great. It's going to replace the need for a lot of expensive infrastructure. in that area.
We don't need to needle our roads anymore.
Yeah.
You know how much work that is.
Yeah.
To like have people dig the roads to bury
My friend
fiber on the ground.
My friend was digging these in Angola
Yeah.
from Portugal, and every time they'd find like diamonds or gold, they had to stop digging them. It's
Exactly.
so annoying.
And then go talk to the government and
Yeah.
wait 2 years. It's
Exactly.
incredible. So imagine I don't have to do that to provide connectivity to billions of people. The whole world will be connected in minutes.
I love it. And what's Africa going to look like in 30 years? What's if we
I
get
think
this right?
it depends on us, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for me, I look at it as a responsibility. My personal goal is, if God helps me, Africa today produces 3% of global GDP. How do I get that number from 3% to 30%? That is what I wake up in the morning and think every day. If we're 30%, then we're neck and neck with the US.
I love it. I love
So
it.
let's see.
Well, hopefully, we both grow together.
That's the idea. I think it would be bigger than that, right? I think because the pie will be so much bigger if we're all working towards that you could have even more global growth, right? If Africa can contribute 30% of global GDP, imagine how many more economies we would enable to grow as well.
That means we're all winning from everything that gets created there. That's a
Exactly.
great note to end it on. E, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.